Welcome everybody to Nomad, the world is my beat. I'm journalist Liza Foreman and I'm taking you around the world with me in my suitcase. In this episode, Overland to AlUla, you'll be following a trip with me that I took from Nice to Tel Aviv on a flight, and from there on I decided to travel overland to a place called AlUla, which is basically in the middle of nowhere in the Saudi Arabian desert. It's become popular recently because the Saudi government decided to put it back on the map. A long time ago it was famous for some old tombs, and that was pretty much all it had to offer apart from the pristine desert landscape. But that's all changed now. AlUla has its own film studios, it's got its own film commission, it has designer hotels, it has hip restaurants, it has museums, it has gift shops, it has an old town, it has a lot going on. The reason I travelled overland from Tel Aviv through the Negev desert, long before the Gaza war, spent the night in Eilat, crossed the border into Jordan, crossed through Jordan in under an hour and went through a Saudi border, there were multiple ones, and spent 7 hours driving through the desert with a boogieing driver in a headscarf was for two reasons. The first was that I wanted to connect the dots. When I first heard about AlUla, it was through a friend of mine that does PR in Saudi Arabia. And he said he made it sound like it was pretty nuts, that all of a sudden the Saudis had decided to make somewhere in the absolute middle of nowhere a major tourist destination. The reason I went overland, therefore, was that I needed to connect the dots. I've travelled a lot in modern day Israel and in the West Bank. I'm half Palestinian and I know Israel quite well. I had never been to Jordan, I had never been to Saudi Arabia. But basically I took a 4-hour flight from Nice to Tel Aviv, travelled through the Negev desert, spent the night in Eilat, travelled through Jordan, spent the 7 hours driving through to AlUla, and spent a wonderful 10 days getting to know the area and witnessing a film shoot for a local film called Norah. And I believe it was the first film to be shot with an entirely Saudi crew. It was something like that. It was blisteringly hot in the desert. It was way too hot for me. It was more than 50 degrees. On the way back, I travelled back through Jordan, went to see Petra, spent a few days in Amman, and crossed into Palestine using the King Hussein Bridge. I went to Bethlehem and I went to check out my great-grandfather and my great-grandmother's homes, and to wander around the city, which is actually the birthplace of my father's family, many of whom still live there today. He's estranged. I haven't been there too often, but I do go there whenever I get the chance. So I think this story is important for various reasons. One, it just shows you, with a bit of initiative and a lot of money, what you can do to just create new attractions, to draw people to different regions. I think Saudi Arabia has done a great job of creating a film industry, building these new cities, Neon. AlUla's an old city, but it's totally changed its own landscape, and that's fascinating. They've created a homegrown film industry, part of which we witnessed there. And furthermore, the stark contrast between Petra, which was thoroughly overrun and over-touristy, and AlUla, which was really empty and pristine, was really stark. It was very interesting. I don't like flying, and that leads to me doing a lot of overland trips. But I'm also so curious about the world, and I've spent so much of my life in long-haul flights that it's always my choice. I left from Nice because I'd been working at the Cannes Film Festival for 2 weeks, and following that, I spent 5 days moderating at a streaming festival in Monaco and attending parties and glamorous balls. And yet from there I went to the desert, Saudi Arabia, back into Nice, back into Cannes for a week, and finally up to Paris. So you only live once. If you can work on the road, if you can get some invites, if you can find a reason to be out there more than the time you spend in your own home. That is how I live. I've come home tonight. I'm recording this after a trip to Luxembourg from Paris, and I'm off on another overland trip to Morocco in about 12 days. Somebody asked me if I get tired of travel. I'm never tired of travel, ever, but I am tired of the fact that I miss my own life in the place that I live because I'm gone so much. And these days I make a really concerted effort to minimise the time I'm away and maximise the time I'm at home and strike a balance. But nonetheless, I doubt if too many people are in that position where they're over travelling. And I've heard other colleagues say wherever they're travelling in the world, they absolutely insist on being home for the weekend to be with their partner. And now I understand why. So if you get a chance, go check out AlUla. Drive through Saudi Arabia. Go to some new destinations. Go and visit their other new cities. And if you can, to save the planet, or because it's more interesting, travel out overland and don't fly.